Affordable housing is one of the government's pet schemes, and recent extension in low interest rates granted to the middle income buyers is expected to provide another boost to this ambitious project. But what's the situation on the ground? Is there real offtake, and what segments is it coming in? We've got two voices joining us from the sector. Arun, Nanda of Mahindra Lifespaces to speak about the real estate side of this, and Harshil, Mehta, who is with DHFL, joining us on the show as well. Thank you both so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Let me start with you, Harshil. I really want to get a sense of what's happening in this in the offtake of these loans, affordable housing loans. What are you seeing, and what segments is it coming in? Is it the absolute lowest bucket, or is actually one bucket higher than that where you're seeing the loan demand, Harshil?
Good morning. Now, if you look at the overall complete scenario as far as real estate and the housing finance is concerned, what we are seeing is the major interventions which we have seen in the economy. One is to do with the launch of Prime Minister Awas Yojana, and second is to do with the rollout and implementation of RERA. Both of these large interventions have had a major impact on the entire real estate as well as the housing in this country. Now, when we further slice it out and we look from at DHFL, when we see we have been historically always present in tier 2 and tier 3 locations and outskirts of metro locations. Now, in this segment, there has always been a consistent demand, where supply has one of the challenges and the bottlenecks in terms of the growth. Now, when we further look at it, you see that with the strong tailwinds under Prime Minister Awas Yojana, what you see is a large amount of interest which comes into this segment, and I can just quote, as I was driving to the office today, I at least heard 3 commercials which were actually talking about that this the projects by the builder falling under Prime Minister Awas Yojana. So it kind of tells us that
Harshil, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there. I'm sorry, Harshil, I'm going to interrupt you there because I think my question was far more specific. That we know that the chatter around this is very much on everybody's minds, on newspaper advertisements, etc. But I want to know, for instance, what are the affordable housing buckets in which you are lending, and how much of an increase have you seen over last year? At the end of the day, the talk has to turn into activity, and that's what we're trying to judge. Is the activity there?
Yeah, I was just coming to that. And this tailwinds has resulted in growth. If you look at our Q1 numbers itself, our housing loans itself grew over 34%. When you compare that with on a year-on-year basis, predominantly bulk of it coming from the affordable housing space, with the ticket size on an average at just about 13-14 lakh rupees. Again, coming in from the tier 2 and the tier 3 markets under 2 aspects. One is the developer projects in those, may not necessarily be large developers, local developers coming up with local projects in those towns, and self-construction activity which has also picked up pace in those towns. And I would say again, this is predominantly coming in from your tier 2, tier 3 markets, getting reflected in how our disbursements has grown. Okay. The pace continues. The subsidy, the claims to National Housing Bank has started trickling in, started flowing in, which shows that there is a good amount of offtake in this segment.
Okay, Harshil, I'm just going to come back to you. Let me see if I can get across to Mr. Arun Nanda, Non-Executive Chairman of Mahindra Lifespaces as well. All right, he's not with us anymore. So I'm going to go back to you, Harshil. I'm sorry, I was hoping to get a developer standpoint on this as well. So you are saying that disbursements have picked up. Is there any specific segment, sort of income segment where the demand is largely coming for? Any specific markets where the demand is largely coming from?
Yes, clearly you see more awareness and more demand coming in from the low and middle income segment. And when I say low and middle income segment, I'm talking about annual income which is ranging from 8 lakh rupees to 15-17 lakh rupees on an annualized basis. And this is where you are also seeing the effect coming in, and clearly you see how the demand is being driven from Bharat and not from India. And when I say Bharat, it is those tier 2 and tier 3 towns. And on the backdrop of a good monsoon, we are already seeing good signs with respect to how people are eager to take this forward with the overall support coming under the PMAY scheme.
That's interesting. Arun Nanda, non-executive chairman of Mahindra Lifespaces, is with us. Mr. Nanda, good morning and thanks for joining in as well. How has been the response to the spate of launches that you've done in the affordable housing scheme? And is there a sense that you have about the quantum of growth that the space by and large could see over the course of the next 18 to 24 months?
You know, that is the segment which is going to grow. And our response has been pretty good in that segment. In fact, the Chennai project was sold out soon after the launch. But the issue is that at least in Mumbai, we find that the so-called affordable housing segment also investors are coming in. And that gets me a little scared because, the affordable housing project was actually launched by the government and we are putting it for actual users. Investors are going to spoil the market because they're not going to be living there. They have just invested. And because the investors have moved from the larger segment to the smaller segment. Because the larger segment is not seeing any growth. But having said that, I think the affordable is the next future for the real estate industry.
I would have thought, Mr. Nanda, that the right to not let an investor come in would stay with the developer. I mean, we've seen that.
We don't. That is why we have problems in Bombay, because we don't sell it to the investor. We are very particular.
Yeah. Mr. Nanda, good morning. Hi, this is Mehta here. I wanted to try and get your view on the two extensions that we saw come into place from the government over the last couple of weeks. One was, the extension of the interest SOP for middle-income home buyers by 15 months, so now all the way up to March 2019. I'm assuming, no-brainer there, that will help spur demand for a longer period of time. But more interestingly, I think the public-private partnership policy to promote private investment in affordable housing, do you see that spurring more developers into this space?
Let me take the first one first. Yes, this interest subvention is going to help. But some of the banks, I don't know about my friend in Diwan Housing, but some of the banks are little upset with the people misusing it. People take the subvention and then repay the loan. So they go through all the effort. And I believe this mischief is happening in that market because Indians are very smart and they know how to do it.
Okay.
How to break the law. I hope they will, wise sense will prevail. And again, that's where the investor type is the one who does the mischief because he's not paying interest on. He gets 2 lakhs upfront, he's investing less, and his return on investment goes up.
Okay, so that's critically one issue that could hurt further response to that scheme.
Yeah, because the lot of banks are, little apprehensive of getting into the sector because certainly they are finding that people are taking the loan, taking the sub 2 lakhs of rupees and then repaying the loan. And I don't have any facts to prove it, but this is what I hear from my friends in the banking sector.
Okay.
As far as public-private partnership is concerned, there's a lot of talk, but nothing has come out. I don't think the government is clear what they want to do. See, Gujarat, for example, what has happened is that all the prime land, they are themselves developing. And the private, although we are not in Gujarat, so my knowledge is also again hearsay, is that the private developers are finding it difficult to compete because government takes land cost at zero or at ready reckoner rate. And but I have personally been talking to quite a few chief ministers. They all want to do it. They want to do it, but on the ground, we have not been able to sign one MOU with any government to do that. Because that is the only way affordable will really, if the Prime Minister wants housing for all, it will only happen if either the land use rules are changed or the government brings in the land. Because there is a huge mindset problem with that segment that they don't want to get away from their current location. for whatever reason. It may be job, it may be children's school, but I personally think it's more a mindset issue.
So, Mr. Nanda, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that you could be in fact promoting several more affordable housing projects
Yes, we are.
at Mahindra Lifespaces if you had more clarity from both the central and state governments on how this PPP framework is supposed to work, and if they were able to bring land to these projects in partnership with you all at affordable rates. Have I understood that correctly? We could actually see acceleration only if that happens. Right now, there is no acceleration.
Because it's happening, we are selling, we're selling 10, 20, 30% more. But in that segment, the demand is 1,000% more than what you're currently selling. And that will only happen through PPP. But I don't know, seems to be not much desire on the form of government to get into the PPP. See, there is another problem that in land-related matters, because of the historical problems that are there, people are very scared to get into land deals. And we have given other options to the government also in some cases that, look, why don't you convey the land to the society and we will develop the project. So you're not giving it to us, you're giving it to the... But, there is a lot of talk in the government, but there's no action. I must have spent 5, 6 meetings in each state trying to pursue it. Finally, you get fed up and you say, we'll outright buy my land in the market and do it.
That's an interesting insight, because we were hopeful that affordable housing, amongst the few other schemes that the government's promoting, now last evening we have electrification of homes, are the key impetuses for growth to pick up in this country. And if you're saying that you aren't seeing as much movement on the ground, then that comes in as a disappointment of sorts, right?
Yeah, but Menka, again, my definition of affordable housing is not the definition of most of my brethren in the industry. My definition of affordable housing is sub 10 lakhs. What people are talking of affordable housing is that they've taken 1,000 square feet flat in Gurgaon and made it 850 and call it affordable. That's not affordable.
No, that isn't.
That is my see, because normally people spend 4 years' income on a household income. Now, if you're looking at the category of the unskilled workers or the semi-skilled workers in the industry, or your chauffeurs or your drivers or the thelawala, they cannot afford more than 7-8 lakhs of rupees. So you have to look at the sub 10 lakh category.
Yeah, no, point well taken. So we also want to bring Harshil back into the conversation. Harshil, maybe now we can get a specific answer from you on exactly what the increase in the number of, let's say, loan takers, maybe at your firm, have been like in the affordable segment, enough to justify the hope. Is it enough? My question is it enough to justify the hope that this could be one key driver for economic growth?
Menka, as far as the entire story around affordable housing is concerned, very specifically, like I mentioned earlier, we have in the Q1 itself, DHFL has posted a 34% year-on-year growth purely in the home loans segment, without any dilution in our ticket size, which I mentioned is only 13 lakh rupees. Again, coming in from tier 2, tier 3 towns. And yes, as Mr. Nanda pointed out,
are you doing enough traffic in the sub 10 lakh category? Are you doing enough traffic in the sub 10 lakh category?
Sorry, come again?
Are you doing enough traffic in the sub 10 lakh
yes,
category?
Absolutely.
Could you give us some numbers on what the pickup there has been like, if any?
Yes. Yes. When we further break it up, you find that, see, in your value terms, it may not be too much, but when you look at on a number of customer base, when you acquire, in the home loan segment, which we do, 35-40% of our customer base, in an incremental basis is up to 12 lakh rupees. And that itself tells you the kind of momentum, and you actually see it happening by way of the same thelawalas, the same rickshawalas coming and walking into the branches saying that ये हमारे papers है, आप बताइए इसमें loan होगा कि नहीं होगा. This is the kind of interest you are seeing. But if you had the right kind of supply, I can very much with confidence say that if you had the right supply, your growth which we are seeing could have been far better than this, because you do not have adequate supply in the sub 12 lakh in those markets which can meet those requirements to meet the demands.
I think that's what Mr. Nanda was referring to as well. Well, that's the discussion that we wanted on this affordable housing push. Mr. Nanda, thanks so much for joining in as well for this. Harshil, just one final question to you. That's over and above this discussion that we're having. I'm presuming that you want to either lease or sell out the BKC property that you have. Are there timelines that you're working with for the same?
See, as far as the BKC building is concerned, the management has been very clear. We have time again said that that is the building. Either we want to rent it out, or we want to exit from that. Our decision is firm on that, and we are continuing to work towards that to see either. And when we want to lease it out, we also want to be sure that you do not want to lease out to multiple tenants. So we are exploring all the options which are available to us to make sure that as far as that building is concerned, we are able to take it to its own logical conclusion, and that is something which we at the management level are driving it to happen.
All right, Mr. Nanda wanted the last word on this debate. Mr. Nanda?
Yes, we talk of percentage growth, but on what base? We need 22 million homes, and since the Yojana was launched, we have sold only 500,000 homes. So let's get the numbers right. So percentages are very deceptive when you're looking at a task of this size. That's all I wanted to say.
No, and I think there's nothing more that anybody can say in the face of those numbers. Arun, Nanda and Harshil, thank you very much for joining us this morning on this affordable housing debate. So I suppose we'll have to wait.